We're now joined by Benjamin Anthony. He's the CEO of the Miriam Institute. Benjamin, if Iran's missile range is indeed expanding, how credible is that threat to European cities, and how prepared are countries like the United Kingdom, for one, to defend against this?
So it's good to be with you, and thank you for having me. I think that the threat to Europe is one that the Europeans have essentially lullabied themselves to sleep in the face of. The fact is that if you ask the Iranian regime what they are about, they will tell you. It's about the spreading of the revolution. It's about the ending of the United States, the ending, of course, of Israel, and essentially destroying Western culture and civilization as we know it. And that includes Europe. And unfortunately, the Europeans, especially as I call it once Great Britain, have very deliberately downscaled and downsized their militaries to a point where I don't actually think that they're capable fighting forces at all. Taking the British, we heard that Minister Steve Reid, who is the housing minister in the UK, expressed the idea that Great Britain has one of, if not the best military in the world, capable of defending the island, the British Isles. I don't think that's true. I think the UK has reduced itself down under its own watch to nothing more than very capable intel, very capable special forces, the SAS, the SBS, and others like them, and of course the nuclear deterrence. But its standing military, quite frankly, is next to non-existent. And you're seeing them having to link arms with the United States of America because absent America's protection, NATO as a whole is in a very precarious situation. And so the firing of these missiles toward Diego Garcia, showing that capitals, as the chief of the general staff of the IDF, cities such as Berlin, Rome, Paris, and later on Israel asserted London are within range, that should give a very clear idea of what it is the Iranians are prepared to do. And it also really puts paid to this notion that we should wait until a threat is imminent before we act against a regime that has shown it is willing, capable, and able to attack essentially anywhere and everywhere, including those, one could argue, were traditionally its allies, such as Qatar and Turkey. So the British had better wake up swiftly from their slumber. I don't know whether...
Politically, how is Britain trying to balance supporting U.S. operations in the region while insisting that it's not being drawn directly into the war? And how is the British public receiving all of this?
Well, you know, Britain is, unfortunately, it has at the helm a distinct non-leader named Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer is somebody who managed to find his way to recognizing a phantom Palestinian state that doesn't exist. He declared Britain's recognition of that state. Again, nothing more than an apparition in reality, but is woefully unable to recognize threats that are coming his way, whether it be from domestic unrest as a result, in my opinion, of the steady Islamification of Britain, or whether it be from threats coming from further afield, such as those that we're talking about here in this segment. He's a desperately unpopular prime minister. And as I've said before, he really does make Neville Chamberlain seem and appear Churchillian by comparison to him. This is an individual who's shown himself to be completely inept, completely unwilling to rise to the challenge. And while he declares that Britain is not part of this war, he has, fortunately, against his own will, having been dragged to this point by the nose, he has said that British bases can be used by the United States, albeit for defensive purposes. And now we're going to hear this individual ratchet up his own rhetoric. I don't think that will be particularly compelling for the Iranians when it comes to expressing that he is determined to defend the British Isles. The people of Britain are not impressed with this individual, rightly so. He's a woefully unimpressive man, not fit for this time and for this purpose, unfortunately.
You know, obviously there is an economic angle here. With the Hormuz still disrupted, how seriously is the risk of fuel shortages or wider financial shocks across Europe? And what do we know about how it's already impacting daily life in the UK, for one?
Well, you know, I defer to the UK to talk about fuel shortages. The minister that I just mentioned, Steve Reid, who is that housing minister in Britain, expressed that he doesn't see the need at this time for the rationing of fuel. But I do want to clearly prioritize what's at play here and what's at stake here. I realize that people may be being hurt in their pockets, but that to me is a distant second order priority compared to the fact that Israel has a rapacious, fanatical jihadist regime over there in Iran that wants nuclear weapons capabilities, that is actively firing ballistic missiles towards our people, killing some of those people, severely injuring a great many of them, and continues to seek to build that ballistic weapons capability, and also has its terror proxies arrayed across our borders, both Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hamas inside the Gaza Strip and Hezbollah inside southern Lebanon. To me, that is the first order priority, to get rid of those three challenges. And if I was required to pay a little bit more at the pump, if I was required perhaps to consider turning down my heating for the day in order to make sure that this threat is really removed, then I'm afraid that I would be a willing partner in that deal. I think it's high time that Israel and America took the fight to Iran. For some reason, we were too long deterred by their obscene rhetoric about our complete and utter destruction. And I'm very hopeful that this war continues as it has done thus far, despite all of the media rhetoric to the contrary, to systematically, accurately take down the target set that has been put forward both by the Americans and by the Israelis.
All right, Benjamin Anthony, thank you for joining us with that insight.